Welcome to another in our video series on the topic of micro-social determinants of health. I'm Doug Nussman, head of sales for Montoux in North America. And with me today is Mike Hughes, subject matter expert. And in this session, we're going to talk about using this concept to make an informed plan to age at home, a place where I think most of us want to live out the rest of our lives. So with that said, Mike, let's talk about the micro-social determinants of health and aging and what sort of things most impact someone's ability to age safely and happily at home.
Well, I think we can recognize the fact that as we age, our bodies change. Our ability to do day-to-day tasks may very well decline to the point of us needing help. Like I said earlier, that the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services estimates that 2/3 of us are going to need this type of help at some point in our lives. And that help can come in from, bringing in assistive devices and technologies, but mostly from family and paid caregivers. So recognizing that things will or are changing and making common sense adjustments to your behaviors and environment can have a lot of impact. So this means getting educated on what you can change now and what might happen in the future. Right? For instance, right now you can make common sense updates to your home for aging in place. And very often these investments don't cost a lot.
So what I'm hearing is that you need to have a plan, right?
Yeah, you need to have a plan. I mean, not necessarily a complete plan because, you don't know all the needs that you're going to have, but it makes sense to have some degree of readiness. So again, making smart investments in your home, making your desire to age at home very clear to your loved ones, and even getting familiar with some of the care management services that are out there that can help you and your family if you're suddenly at need. And I say suddenly because, as I've aged and I've given the profession I'm in, I'm hearing more and more stories from people about suddenly becoming a caregiver. Mom falls, breaks her hip. Now you're a caregiver and you don't know what to do. And I think this conversation is especially relevant to anyone that was smart enough to buy a long-term care insurance policy earlier in their lives. That means that they were motivated enough and they sort of saw parts of this future to get prepared financially. But having more financial resources when you're at need is only part of the picture. When it comes to taking care of yourself and your family, the quality of the care you receive, the quality of your environment is equally as important to maintaining aging at home and supporting a really good quality of life.
That's great. So what's a part of a smart plan for aging?
A smart plan for aging, well, I guess I'd start with getting a handle on any chronic conditions you may have if you have them. Following your treatment plan, monitoring your condition, knowing what's usual and unusual in terms of your day-to-day, conditions and how to escalate this to your doctors. It also means knowing how to talk to your doctors, being open about your goals, asking questions about anything you don't understand. It's your right as a patient to be informed. And then next, I say, take a look at your home environment. Trips and falls, definitely a top reason for moves into assisted living and nursing care. We bought the house that I'm in right now from a couple that moved in the mid-1950s, and they wanted to stay here for as long as possible. But she was working in the kitchen and she had a dish towel on the floor, and the floor was wet because that's why she had the dish towel on the floor to soak it up. And she slipped and cracked her hip, and they both had to move into assisted living. Really, really tough for them to leave the place that they called home for 60 years. So watching out for and removing trip and fall hazards, and making some other common sense updates is important. You can get some good home safety checklists and guides from places like the Consumer Product Safety Commission. And it really is just, a lot of these things don't cost a lot and can actually be pretty attractive. Lever door handles. You don't have to install the grab bars in the bathroom right away. By the way, it's one underneath the shower and one on the wall. Why underneath the shower? Because that's where you put your head and you get disoriented. But you don't have to put the grab bars in right away, but at least put the blocking in there for the grab bars so it's more secure when you have to use them. If you're redoing the front of your house, that entryway, low threshold, no step. If you're doing a stairwell, put sturdy railings on both sides. And not only does it make the home safer for you when you're older, but you can accommodate older people in the home and even make use of it right now. For instance, lever door handles. I know when I'm carrying a big pile of packages in my hand, it's easier to open a door just by kind of like putting my hip into it. So that's sort of an example of universal design principles. And also talk to your family about the fact that you're going to get old. I know it's not a happy subject, but more so tell them about your preference on where you want to age, whether it's going to be in assisted living, if you want that community, if you want to age in your home. But really, it's all about aging in the place that you choose for as long as you want. And for about 80% of us, according to the AARP at least, that means living in your own home for as long as possible.
That's great. So let's just say you already need help to live at home. What's the best approach to care so that you avoid or defer the need of expensive nursing home care?
Yeah, it's a good question. So if you're committed to aging at home and you need help, the most effective thing is going to be a plan of care that really recognizes your needs, your limitations, and also your goals and your preferences. And then two, systems and supports that recognize this, compensates for any functional limitations you may have, and importantly, allows you to feel as autonomous as possible when you're receiving care. That's really important for quality of life. Autonomy in that feeling independent and in control of your situation, even if you need outside help. I know that sounds a little abstract, but again, your mood and motivation goes a long way to supporting your longevity. I mean, that's why social isolation in seniors is really a huge issue, especially in COVID, because depression and mood state really affects your health. But I guess, if I were to identify what turns up the most in efficacy studies in terms of supporting safe aging at home and happy aging at home, and especially if you're looking to scale intervention programs across geographies, across patient populations, is the family caregiver. An educated and well-supported family caregiver is by far and away the best thing to extend that time of home, because these are the people that know their loved ones the best, their motivations, their culture, their habits, that sort of thing.
So that's great because this kind of hits close to home for me. So what can you say more about supporting family caregivers?
Yeah, well, I mean, generally caregiving has a lot to do with ability and motivation. It also has a lot to do with education. I mean, it comes on a spectrum from, it's an honor and a privilege to care for this person, to it always falls on me to do these sorts of things. Every caregiving situation is different, but generally quality of care goes up for anyone if their caregivers are better educated and supported. So I'm talking about introducing things into the mix that may take burden off of caregiving. Thinking things like assistive devices, walkers, clothes hooks, things like that. Generally, the best approach to supporting somebody in this spirit of autonomy that I mentioned before is to, if somebody needs help doing something, you start with cueing and encouragement. And then maybe you'll introduce an assistive device like a clothes hook to allow somebody to do something for themselves. And then hands-on care is kind of the last step. But overall, and especially if we're talking about those surprise caregiving situations, families just often need a good start, a good head start. So care management resources that can provide education, that can help to put together a shared plan of care, that can find local resources to help and just generally solve problems for them. Those can be pretty effective. And there's a variety of solutions out there. I mean, there's virtual care coordinators, there's people right in the community on the ground. And they each have price points, they each have pros and cons. But again, these are knowledgeable people that really kind of take some of the unknown out of family caregiving. And that's the thing. Family caregivers at the end, they feel very vulnerable, and they'll sometimes take anything, and even if it's wrong. So a good vetted care management service is definitely a winner. There's also a world of technology out there. And COVID gave us a gift where, telehealth technology for sure is more permissible than ever. So I'd say that more and more people who are vulnerable can be seen by doctors in their home. They don't have to make a trip outside, save the trips for good occasions, There's caregiver apps out there that can help with care planning and communications between caregivers. And there's these next-gen communication and emergency response devices they've gone a long way from falling and I can't get up. The prices, they use radar technology, they use thermal cameras, they may use really cool social engagement tools like games or live entertainment, but they're ways of also just kind of keeping tabs on somebody, medication reminders, appointment reminders. I mean, it's never going to be as perfect as a good live caregiver in the home, but some people, it may be inevitable that somebody has to be alone at some point. So this helps to fill in the gaps. So I'll just offer that.
That's great. Thanks, Mike. We really appreciate you sharing those thoughts with us. And to continue the conversation, please feel free to reach out to me or Mike directly.